Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Listen, we're going to be talking about the one and only ICP coin. Haven't done, a technical analysis on this for some time, right? So in this video, we are going to be covering the technicals. We're going to cover some of the fundamentals, and we're going to see how high this coin can go. And of course, we're also going to take a look at Bitcoin and, the altcoin dominance and such. So let's just jump right into it. But before we do, shout out to our sponsor. Big shout out to Uber Eats for sponsoring this video. First 50 people get $20 off their first 2 meals, which means you can literally eat for free. Just use the code on your screen or the link in the description below. Anyways, guys, yeah, if you want some free food, literally you get $20 off your first 2 meals. And yeah, let's just jump right into this. Okay, listen. So we can see overall that ICP, right, it obviously had its last top in, late November, early December, right? That's practically when a lot of altcoins had that pump. Why did that happen? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's because, something like Bitcoin dominance did drop off a cliff at that time, right? We can see middle to late November, Bitcoin dominance starts dropping, and then we can see the peak was at the beginning of December, right? So the peak was at the beginning of December, which is why after that, everything kind of just fell apart very, very quickly, right? Very, very, very quickly. But you know what? That was a good sign overall, because the thing is, Bitcoin dominance drops roughly 6%, more or less. And something like ICP went from 675 all the way to $16. This coin practically went up 2.5 times in a matter of a month, when Bitcoin dominance only dropped, that 6%. And it is expected for Bitcoin dominance to be dropping at least, 35% this cycle. So, just even based off that, if, if the ratios were the same, we could expect ICP to actually be hitting a very, very decent take profit without nothing, too crazy, right? We can see 1.26%. After that, of course, is sold off. We went into what I call hell, right? Because we went below the main support and resistance, and we are still currently below that. Now, what is next for this coin? Well, overall, right? Overall, we saw that we had a big, nice break of structure after creating a nice support for several weeks. We can see this token was holding, let's just say $4.50 for multiple weeks, right? At the end of March, we hit it. And then the whole April, we were practically here. And then the beginning of May, we started to see some lifeline. Okay. Now we can see the last 2 weeks, we have been slowly selling off and we are correcting. The reason why I believe that is happening is because we go to something like the altcoin dominance, right? If we pull this up over here, go to others, we can actually see that the altcoin dominance retested off of this area over here and just continue to go lower. Now, the most probable thing that's going to happen for this is, generally speaking, is that we're going to probably dip another percent or so in terms of altcoin dominance, causing a lot of altcoins to have their final retracement, right? You can see we're going right into this massive zone. I've been talking about this for months now, for months on end. Literally, when we were even all the way back here in October, I was still talking about this zone. So, I do believe that that is going to be the cause of, us coming back down here and then eventually ripping up, because we can see every time there was a steep sell-off, instantly we started to recover. So last time around, right, we were chilling for a couple of weeks, we drop off, and then we start recovering for the next couple of weeks, for a couple of months, and then that's of course when altcoin season, everything starts happening. Same thing with here, right? We sell off, boom, sharp sell off, and then we start recovering, going up for multiple months, even more than that. So every time there's a big dip, right, usually there's a very quick recovery to the upside. So what does that mean for something like ICP? Well, if we look at it, that may mean ICP might have some type of retracement. Now, here's the thing, right? Dropping like 1 or 1.25% in altcoin dominance is it's a lot, right? It is a lot. But we have to realize that it's most likely not going to be as bad as we think, because there's going to be more money coming into the markets overall, right? If we go and look at the total market cap, we can see that we are near all-time highs. And I expect overall for us to continue pushing up the total market cap over the next couple of weeks. So even if dominance slightly goes against us, right, I do expect for altcoins not to retrace too harshly, right? I'm talking about max like 20% most likely. Now, some people might consider that a lot. For me in crypto, 20% is like an average day, to be honest. Where do I see ICP retracing? Well, first off, we do have this imbalance zone over here, right? This is what's left of the imbalance between, let's just say 497 and 465 is the main area. So this is where I would be looking to start dollar cost averaging. I do believe it's going to dip into here. And then if we do manage to go lower to 450, that's when I would continue also to dollar cost averaging. Now, there is always that chance we may sweep these lows over here of 418 before we go up, right? Everything drops sharply, goes something like this, does something like this, and then we start recovering, okay? I don't really think we should go much lower than $4, generally speaking. Generally speaking, I do think that would be a fantastic buying opportunity, though, if you did get that sweep below the yellow line of $4.20. Okay, overall, a couple of weeks ago, we were calling out for buys in this zone, right? So if you were in the Discord or even watch the videos, you would have bought in this nice zone. And now the fact that we might retrace here potentially means you may get that final opportunity. Okay, but just know global liquidity is overall just absolutely splurging into these markets, which means everything may shift very, very soon. And it really should, even just in terms of technicals, right? When we go to something like this, in terms of the trend line, we can literally see that, boom, this was the shift, right? We had, boom, we were touching the trend line, selling off, boom, we touched it, we went over a little bit, and then this was literally the final point, and this is when everything started to change. We officially went from selling off, and now we're in consolidation mode. We are technically above this area of kind of consolidation, right? Even if we dip below it, that still could count, where we can go and do something like this, right? Let's say we do go down, we go back above, boom, diagonally, and then we just continue going up. Now, where's ICP going to go? Well, I think ICP, right, next target, without looking too much at the micro moves, would be $16, right? I believe that is the next relevant zone. Now, we could talk about the micro zones, but you got to realize everything is going to start speeding up over the next couple of weeks. So there's no point of talking about the micro zones unless we're talking about, dollar cost averaging, okay? But if you want to get into specifics of that, highly recommend joining the Discord. Portfolio reviews, economic and global updates and news, frequent up-to-date technical analysis, and a very supportive community. Sell and buy calls and trading education is provided. If that sounds good to you, now is the time to act. Once the markets start moving, there is no I should have, coulda, woulda. Now is the time. If you want to take things to another level, we have the blueprint that covers everything from A to Z in crypto that you need. No fluff, no bullshit, just the most important news, fundamentals, and technicals to have you succeed in these markets. As you know, everything is always going to be marked up to the very specific details. Boom. So once we kind of get past that, ladies and gentlemen, right, I would expect us to probably consolidate a little bit before we continue going up higher. The reason why I say that is because that yellow zone overall is a nice support, right? And once we kind of start going, I do believe ICP will fly. Okay, I overall do believe ICP will fly. If we go to something like coin market cap, I believe ICP at the minimum should be one of those tokens that hit between 35 and 45 billion, bare minimum. So if we were to 10x right now, right, we would be at 27.5 billion, which would mean $51. Okay, so if we even did double that, we would be slightly over 50 billion market cap, but we could go upwards of $100, in my opinion, fairly easily, right? Fairly easily. And when it comes to the actual charts, it does indicate that that could happen. The only thing I would be looking out for is this weekly institutional candle of $72, which would mean that we would be roughly already in the high 30 billions in market cap. So, like I said, if things didn't go that well, I still think ICP would minimum reach $70. After that, we can see there are multiple liquidity zones of $86, right? Like we talked about. And then after that, it starts getting, into the more smaller details. The next relevant zone would be that $106 to 126. And then after that, it just kind of, it gets trickier and trickier. But those are the two main zones I'm looking for. I do think ICP, if ICP has a double pump, right? If there's going to be a double pump this cycle, then ICP can definitely hit upwards of even $180, which is my very, very original price prediction. But it might require more time, might require a double pump, and ICP would have to be on the radar. But that is it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys did enjoy, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.